And this person, he is amazing in his own right. So he is an African American who has two, well, I believe now, still holds the record for two Oscars for sound. And he's the only person who's ever done that back to back. And he's African American, right? One is for the movie Glory, and one is for the movie Dancing with Wolves.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes.
Is that the first time, despite color, or for African American?
I think it's the first. He's the first African American to get it, but I think it's the first person back to back. Period. Like you can clarify that. Yeah, I think first because he got it back to back. Like the Oscars came around, he got it for the next thing. So I'm gonna let him clarify that.
Yes,
but he is an amazing person, and he's a great person to learn a lot about the backside of the Oscars, the backside of film, the backside of the industry. Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of Making It. My name is Kenan Cooley, and I am with
Alvin Chia. Hey, everybody. It's so good to be with you, Kenan.
Yes. And Alvin, I know I look like I am 12, but I'm not.
You look like you're 14.
Exactly. But I'm actually quite a bit older. And I have a story to tell you.
Yeah.
So I went to school and got my undergrad degree, just like everyone else. Around 22, I graduated.
Okay.
But I waited 30 extra years to get my master's.
That is quite a,
Yes. I did. And it wasn't on purpose. Okay, let's just start with that. So my undergrad degree is not in communication, and a different subject we won't talk about. But as time would have it, I ended up discovering I loved communications and media.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started working. I did an internship, and I started working with it, teaching and doing media, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I won't say 20 years later, but somewhere around there, about 20, 25 years later, I was doing okay. But I'm also in an industry where I'm in the DC area, which is mostly news, which is not my forte.
Right.
Okay. So that being said, I'm doing fine, with my business.
So your itch was kind of being scratched, not really.
It was. And then people kept saying, you go to that next level if you get your master's. And I'm like, isn't 20 years a master's? But I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to check off all the boxes. Because that way I can say there's nothing left on the table.
Right.
So I did. And in the midst of going to where I went, American University, to get my master's degree, which I did accomplish and I was very happy with, I met a very wonderful man. That's our next guest. And this person, he is amazing in his own right. So he is an African American who has two, well, I believe now, still holds the record for two Oscars for sound. And he's the only person who's ever done that back to back. And he's African American, right? One is for the movie Glory, and one is for the movie Dancing with Wolves.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes.
Is that the first time, despite color, or for African American?
I think it's the first. He's the first African American to get it, but I think it's the first person back to back. Period. Like you can clarify that. Yeah, I think first because he got it back to back. Like the Oscars came around, he got it for the next thing. So I'm going to let him clarify that.
Yes.
But he is an amazing person, and he's a great person to learn a lot about the backside of the Oscars, the backside of film, the backside of the industry. And so without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Russell Williams.
And there he is. Look at that reveal. Look at that reveal. You know he's a pro.
How are you good people doing today?
We are awesome.
We are great. And, I was telling Alvin all about you. And the one thing that I didn't tell you is, so I was telling Alvin that I met you through American University taking my master's degree. And you might not even know that there were 30 years between my undergrad and my master's.
Oh, that I didn't know.
That might tell some math about my age, but that's okay. Anyway, but the thing that I wanted to tell you was that, remember when we had the class where you brought in people who had done well in their profession? I think it was called, I forgot the name of the class.
Oh, Executive Suite.
Executive Suite, yes.
Right.
And it was the one where you would bring people in and they would talk about what they've done and blah, blah, blah. Like, one day I'm going to be on that screen.
That's right. That's right.
But instead, you're on our screen, and that's just as great. So
thank you for sharing your time with us, Doc. I had a quick question that McKinnon just mentioned. She mentioned, and I think because you're a friend of the show, I think you mentioned before, we knew about the back-to-back Oscars, which is incredible. And then soon I'm going to ask you where you hide them in your house, because you're not shallow like me.
No, nothing shallow about that part.
But was the first time for African American to get back-to-back Oscars, or anybody in the industry back-to-back Oscars for sound, period?
Okay, so not the first time anyone in the industry got back-to-back, but it's still not that common.
Oh, no.
I want to say the gentleman that did, what movie was it? Liza Minnelli won her Oscar for it.
Something about New York.
Yeah, but what was the name of that movie? Cabaret.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that person won for Cabaret in the movie that he did the year before or after. But what my resume says is that I became the first African American to ever win multiple Oscars in any category.
Well, that part, yeah.
And then back to back just happened to be icing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you weren't the only person to win it back to back African American though, or?
Well, in terms of African Americans, yes, still the only African American to win back to back.
Yeah.
But
right. Okay.
You put those 30 years apart, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Originally the first to ever win multiple Oscars, but I'm hoping that Viola or Whoopi or somebody.
Yes.
Because the conversations in the back-to-back club are getting kind of stale with just guys.
Yeah.
You need some of those strong sisters in there to say, hey, now, shift the conversation.
And that is a classic example of the kind of person that Kenan was talking about, that you have done so much, but you're always rooting for the next person to come take this bar a little higher. And I think I don't know if that's a burden that our community only shares, but it's something that we have done well over the years. I think we're getting better about it. It's, we all take the hits as a people when somebody that looks like us does something we're not proud of.
Sure.
But the flip side also is reverse. We're so proud and we're like, now you go get yours. Has it always been like that, or are you seeing a change, Doc?
Well, I would say the business that I came into, I moved to LA in 79 to pursue this dream. And so there were, of course, a lot fewer of us on different levels, being behind the camera, in front of the camera, actually having offices at the studios, a lot fewer of us than there are now. So I'm really happy with how the industry has been forced to accept the fact that storytelling is international.
Yeah.
We've been telling stories a lot longer than the rest of the world. The thing that I also just really hated to hear on my way up, coming through DC, the local TV and radio industry there, was when people who I did meet, not all of them, but just a few of them, you'd meet every now and then, and they would kind of give you that smirky comment, it's so lonely at the top. And I'm like, but that's because you didn't bring anyone with you.
Yes, come on now. True.
You gotta bring someone with you. And why is that important? Because you need somebody in your inner circle to be another set of ears.
Yes.
Because if you are the only one, and I've been that person, I'm sure a lot of us have been.
Absolutely.
It's like you don't know whether these people are really giving you the straight, skinny,
or filling some kind of quota.
You know what I'm saying? And so there are times when you have taken a misstep and you need somebody to say, you need to go and
Right.
But if they're not on your team, they'll just let you just go right on.
Right.
That you're doing everything just fine until you end up at the bus stop. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I came here in a limo.
Is it my imagination?
What happened to the
limo?
But that's the industry. I mean, I have so many favorite movie scenes that portray that, and that's the industry. A lot of times we take things personally, or we think things happen to us as a result of this permanent
owed something.
And this is the business of show.
Yeah.
So in that regard, they'll kiss your backside as long as the business is good. Now all of a sudden your numbers start to trail off. And there was a scene in I want to say it was called The Last Tycoon. Robert De Niro was playing the studio head, and he had to meet with the director who the star hated.
Right.
He takes the director out, to the alley between the sound stages, and they're walking and chit chat. And then he basically lets the director know, well, we're letting you go. You're letting me go. And he says, well, I got to go get my jacket. The assistant walking next to Robert De Niro has the jacket.
He already knew.
And then in the background, you've been seeing this limo kind of trailing them. And all of a sudden, the limo comes up on cue, and they almost kick this guy into the car, and he's gone. And I'm like, that's how they do white people?
Yeah.
So get ready for it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your trajectory, about how you started and how you came up through the industry.
I mean, how long is the show?
Give us the highlights.
Highlights. I grew up in Southeast DC. I had a music background. I started playing piano after hearing the church choir do I Hear a Voice of Praying. And I've been hearing that voice of praying ever since then.
Amen.
So that turned me into a critical listener. When I came to American University as an undergrad, a couple other students and I put together this radio workshop. It was called Spirits Known and Unknown. And I think that was really one of my foundational pieces of trying to bring others along and give them access to this thing we call the mass media, and some of the local television people of the day, like the Jim Vances of the world, Larry Bryant's, would come and, interview with us as if we were somebody. And there was future somebody's in there.
Right.
I had this dream of getting into the movie industry, but that took a while. But when I graduated, 5 years in DC working locally, 1979, got on the plane. I had a 90-day leave of absence from my then job, which was sink or swim.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't hit pay dirt, I wasn't going to go home without a net. Completely without a net. But I had 90 days. The thing that was interesting, the Eddie Murphy movie Dolomite, the first person I worked with in LA once I got off that plane turned out to be Rudy Ray Moore.
Really?
Some of the people portrayed in that movie, the people I actually work with. And I said, okay, well, this is the first floor. Let's see what the next levels look like.
Yeah.
Some of the most important things I think I did for myself were to go and observe other people working in the job I wanted to do, which is production sound mixer. I kind of got eased out of the music side. I had two ways I could have gone. I could have pursued music as an engineer, or motion picture, TV work. It turned out it was a little easier to get paid.
Yes.
In movie and TV work.
Yeah.
So, look, rent's due. I got to put gas in the tank, you know what I mean? And I was completely unprepared for the fact that in certain rental units in LA, you don't get a stove and a refrigerator.
No, you do not.
Wow.
Really? It's illegal. Yeah, on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But not in Cali.
No.
Wow.
Cali's for real.
There was no Google back then. I could have Googled that. Where's the Google? So one project at a time, the thing that was most important to recognize, which I had at least learned in DC, but in LA, everybody's moving up their respective ladder.
Yeah.
So even though this might be, if you go to imdb.com and look at my resume, there are a lot of projects there that if I were putting my resume together, I wouldn't include this. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I took this because I needed a new set of hubcaps.
Absolutely.
Right.
The tranny was leaking fluid, but again, the people you work with on the way up, if they like you, they're going to move up their ladder. If they're successful, they're doing their job right. And so each one of those Oscars came from a job that no one has seen or very few people have seen. But the people said, Russell, we're getting ready to do this Civil War movie starring Matthew Broderick. I'd like you to come in and meet the director and the producer.
Yeah.
Dances with Wolves, because the director of Field of Dreams, Phil Robinson, I had worked on his first film. Not many people saw it, but he was mainly a screenwriter.
Yeah.
when he wrote the screenplay for Field of Dreams, the producers wanted him to direct it. He said, no, not really. And they offered more money. No, he says, what would it take? And he says, well, if you hire my entire crew for my first film,
wow,
I will be standing in front of family. Now the only unknown quantities will be actors.
Okay.
So Field of Dreams starred this guy named Kevin Costner.
Right.
Never
That's a
worked with him
big,
before.
yeah.
See, so when Kevin got his directorial debut, he did something similar. He took some of his people from Bull Durham, some from No Way Out, some from Field of Dreams.
Right.
And, but again, if you act like these smaller jobs are just small
don't
jobs,
matter.
Don't have any consequence, that might be the end of your career if you piss off the wrong person.
Very, very, very
about, true. That they found value in what you did, right? They could have said, well, you weren't good enough as a face muscle for somebody else, but they found value in bringing you along and keeping you as a part of the team. And you know.
Well, Miss Kennan, when you call your company Sound is Ready, you have to be ready.
Have to be ready.
Very much so.
See, so you've already put it out there. So I can't come to the director, even if I do have a problem. I said, well, I can't.
But it also this speaks to a lot of people in our business, unfortunately, and of our color, kissed by, as my pastor says, kissed by nature's son.
There you go.
We can get a chip on our shoulder. You know, and it seems like you figured out very quickly that as much as excellence you have to have while you're on the board and behind the thing, you need to have that interpersonal relationship to be able to, because you understand once they call cut, there's another gig that's happening that you got to be ready for.
And we used to say in the business, what's the most important job? The next job. Okay, which means you're not like kind of throwing this job under the bus,
right?
But you have to understand as a freelancer. I mean, so many things that you mentioned. And I also want to say, Alvin, I had a pleasure working with you guys in Take Six in Atlanta back in the 90s. It was like one night.
I love it.
When you cross paths with real talent, I said, now these guys, each one of them had a microphone with their name on it. Each one of them had a different mix mind as they wanted. Like I said, that's a story we'll have to say for another.
That's why you smartly went to the other side, which you get paid less aggravation.
But I will say that McDonald's is what turned me into one part of the professionalism that I had to display in the rest of my career, because, I had personality, probably too much more than my teachers in elementary school, junior high, and high school wanted to be bothered with. But to deal with total strangers.
Right.
Good morning. Welcome to McDonald's. How may I serve you?
Right.
Good. That was something I don't know. I'm going to give this guy. You want to, no.
Right.
No, Williams, you want to be at the counter? This is what you need to do. And I'd have to practice in front of the manager.
Wow.
Because he understood, as you mentioned earlier, there is a double standard. Yeah. So if this guy over here kind of gives him a burger that's not wrapped properly,
right?
But you do it, all of a sudden
it's a problem.
It's a problem, and why we can't have these people in the store, So,
but that speaks to what I was thinking about with. As your trajectory went along, you probably were the only African American in the room or on staff for a lot of that, right?
Well, I would say it goes back and forth. I was so happy that at WRC NBC, when I actually worked there as an engineer, and I worked every day of the Watergate hearings. Well, they had a fairly good amount of Black men and women working in the engineering craft. But the thing that was so beautiful about that experience is I saw white people yelling at each other. Where's page 3? How come we don't have that? And so then I realized, wait a minute, this is a highly competitive field. The clock is ticking.
Regardless.
We're talking about Naval Observatory time. We're not talking about that other time.
Yeah.
Okay. At 10 o'clock, when that sweet second hand hits the 12, if you're not there to punch the button, you got fired. Black, white, yellow, male, female. Yeah. Okay, so thank God that happened, because then I realized that when you get that terse look, or when you're not moving fast enough, or you're not doing this the way that they expect this to be done, precision, it may not be the permanent tan they're complaining about. It's sloppy.
It's not personal,
right. And I actually had to work with people at WRC NBC that were card-carrying Klan.
Wow.
I'm talking about actual.
Yeah.
So, and I found a way, there were three of them, but there was only one I had to work with directly.
Yeah.
And I finally got through to this individual. And then I became the person he made sure knew the projection island top to bottom, because I convinced him, look, man, my dad's a master carpenter. He told me because I used a screwdriver, rather a hammer and a screwdriver to do the job of a hammer and a chisel. He said, son, I make my living with my tools. If you can't use them in a proper manner, don't touch them. And I said, Mr. Malik, I said, these tools are a lot more expensive. I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing. See, then I was no longer what he thought was either NAACP or red, black, and green or whatever. I wanted to be an NBC engineer. Williams, let me show you this. Williams, let me show you how that is. Now, this is hidden over here, but if you see this glitch, you know.
Yeah,
he never invited me home for dinner, but that was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. That's not the relationship I wanted to develop.
His ego left yours on the table, too.
You know, and my thing was when I got to L.A., yeah, you found some folks out in L.A. that may have had a white sheep, but, you know, that's palm tree claim. I was dealing with poplar tree clan, you know, like Billie Holiday was saying.
That is hilarious.
I wasn't worried about them so much, okay? But I actually had a job interview with a producer who wanted me to feel, he wanted to make sure I understood, we're doing this job, we're going to Japan. And it was about the Marine Corps that fought at Iwo Jima. And you realize the Marine Corps was the last branch of the service to desegregate. So he just wanted to make sure I knew I was going to be the only Black person on the trip. I said, well, sir, that's not unusual even here in Los Angeles. I believe we got a plane ticket, and we're meeting at LAX at what time for the flight? And what airline? You know, I'm like, see, he didn't know. When I got in the car to go to the interview, I'd already said he's paying for my trip to Japan.
Exactly. He's
buying all of that, but guess what? I'm going to make sure that I earn my keep.
Right.
When I get over there.
Yeah.
But the times that you are the only person in the room, you realize that, and I don't know if everybody looks at it this way, but one of the things that I try to communicate to the young people of this day, and even some folks in my generation, I just became a septuagenarian. I said, it never left my head that we are the descendants of the Africans who survived the Middle Passage.
Middle Passage, absolutely.
And you're telling me you can't get out of middle school.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we all have things that everybody's had personal tragedies and things that but guess what? I said, you want to be strapped in a ship. You know, I'm not going to show how they were strapped in there for 3 months. And then you have slavery to look forward to.
Right.
You're telling me this little BS here is enough to get you off your game?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But I think we forget that. We forget where we come from and where we can go and what we've gone through.
I mean, there's nothing that we can't do. I mean, people say, well, we're tired of seeing these slave narratives. I said, well, you know, some of them are hard to look at.
Yeah.
But again, we are the descendants of the folks who had that to, if they saw the sunrise and they saw the sun set, there was a victory. And
right. And it also pretends that they're the strongest of the strong of the strong. Yeah. So what's your problem?
Yes.
Your ancestors survived this and you can't get out of bed?
And I just want to make sure whatever happens that we do not disgrace their memory, because you tell me they gave their lives with the dream that there would be somebody just like the three of us doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, forget the Oprahs and forget the Ava DuVernays and the Ryan Cooglers and the things that they could see now if we could bring them back. And of course, they've never left.
Sure.
But you know what I'm saying? And we're saying, well, I don't want to, And I said, look, please understand that the rear view mirror is also what's ahead of us. If we don't learn the lessons that got us this far, it's coming back around. It's coming back around ugly.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you think about that now? How do you feel like it's developed, I guess, in film in general, but also in the industry for us and in general? Because, so much has changed in the last 20, 30 years. I'm sure you can speak upon a lot of that.
I would say that the thing that I think has really been impactful is that because it's a business and because even though we have had opportunities to put our stories on the big and small screen, that so much of the energy in the previous decades were, of course, to be on camera. And then, of course, there were a few of us who wanted to call action cut, and there were a few of us who really had designs on being in the executive suites so we could be part of the decision-making process. But, there was so much legacy that had to step aside in order for the younger generations of the descendants of the people who created the industry to say, no, this is an international, universal endeavor, and we need more voices. And I would say, even though people were given opportunities before the first Black Panther, be no illusion that if Black Panther hadn't made the money it made, a lot of that energy would have gone right out the door.
Absolutely.
Because they have been selling that myth that our stories don't sell overseas. Some of our stories don't even, but look, some of our stories don't even sell here in the U.S.
Right.
And the reason I stopped getting invited to panel discussions from time to time is because I would come with my book of box office receipts. And I'd say, yeah, well, you were there for this movie, that movie, that movie, that movie. But say like Gloria didn't really make any money on the
Right. Yeah.
A lot of the films, some of Denzel's early things like Antoine Fisher's story, so
great films, but nobody,
so we say we want to see positive role models, positive images, more diverse portrayals of our culture on the big screen, and then on the big screen, where are you at?
Don't show up. Yeah.
So
you're right.
It's better that first of all you're not basically chained to a big screen exhibition, meaning you don't have to necessarily go to the movie theaters anymore to see content as it was in my generation. My generation, I'm going to tell you right off the top, In the Heat of the Night was our generation's Black Panther.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Really?
But it was also
impactful.
Oh, come on now. I mean, Sidney Poitier slapped a white man on screen.
Get
and
your
he lived to
tickets.
tell about it. He lived through the entire movie.
And niggas slapped back. Yeah, that's true.
Hello. And Rod Steiger, who played the ideal cracker sheriff, he was like, he said, Gillespie, did you see what he did? Yeah. What you gonna do about it? He said, I don't know. I say, what? You kidding me? But that movie was the one that told me, think about the movie business, not just because of Sidney Poitier's great performance and Rod Steiger's Oscar-winning performance, but there was this guy's name you may have heard of that did the soundtrack. It was a guy named Quincy Jones. And I said, wait a minute, Russell, as a 16-year-old, you mean there are African Americans doing this kind of work behind camera?
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
And then I heard the flute obligatos of this guy named Rahsaan Roland Kirk in the background, and Brother Ray,
Black excellence.
I said, wait a minute, dog. Pump your brakes. Now we're doing, because we had been on the screen, not necessarily always in a positive, manner since the silence.
Right.
But now when I saw Q's name, I'm like, okay.
Somebody's pushing the buttons.
You
mentioned something that I may have mentioned to Kenan before that triggered just now. Years ago, I went to Japan with Marcus Miller. He put together this big review, big jazz festival. It was a one-off, and I have a couple of buddies. We've been going to Japan so many years. I called up a buddy and said, "Hey, man, we're here. Going to be here performing with Layla and Marcus and blah blah blah. Let me know if you want tickets." And my Japanese buddy, stopped me dead in my tracks. He said, "No, absolutely not. I'm going to buy my ticket because the promoters need to see that there is an audience for this. And it's, this is what my culture needs." In other words, it was almost like an act of patriotism for them to support this project so that their whole culture and society would be exposed to more.
I love it.
Our people, nah, man, hook me up. Give 10 tickets for mom and them. It's just a different thing. And until we start supporting our projects, as a people, I don't think we'll get the Wakandas forever.
Yeah, and I think these were the kind of things that I mentioned in the class that Kenan took with me. Poor soul, she had to sit around there for 8 hours listening to this blah blah blah.
It was awesome.
And Executive Suite, because for too many years there was another group of people who was paying for the content that was basically written and directed to appeal to us as an audience. Now, yeah, we bought the tickets at the theater, but when you got a couple $1 million to put on the table and say, okay, I'd like to do this story in this fashion, I'd like to hire this DP, this sound designer, this costumer, so forth and so on, then the industry was not going to say no. They said, well, here's Paramount Studios right here. We got these stages available. You have these trucks over here. You have this much office space. But until we fully embrace the idea that we may have to raise our own money, we may have to take the risk financially. And we're talking about people who, like, say, for instance, this guy Samuel Goldwyn, who the Motion Picture Academy's main theater is named after. There were several times in his career where his buddies, didn't believe in a project as much as he did, so he just put the house up.
Wow.
As collateral to raise his own money. So when you go there and say, well, we don't have the money, but we want you to put all your money out there.
Yeah.
And then, but the last 4 or 5 movies that were done in this genre, the attendance didn't seem to. And people talk about, well, sometimes the ticket sales don't reflect who actually bought the ticket for what movie, possibly. But I assure you, the more we support our storytelling, the wonderful people who actually in this position are telling these stories, the writers, directors, the folks who want to do camera, the folks who want to do visual effects. It's like, please expand the industry, because it's not really a monolith. It's a bunch of people who are putting essentially their careers on the line with every project, because you're only as good as the last project.
Absolutely.
Some people would
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ken.
No, I was going to say that some people would contend, based on what you just said, that you just don't get the funding to go that extra step, to get that extra. I mean, we don't maybe even have a house to even put up. So, where is that balance? Where do you think that balance can come so that we can kind of get that thing up?
But I'm gonna get in trouble, but this is what I've seen. We have money to buy $400 or $500 pair of tennis shoes. Okay. We have money to buy,
the realist of talk.
I'm saying? We have money to buy, super fast, super slick German made cars, Japanese made cars. We put the money on stuff that
we want to.
Is going to give us the kind of identity and cultural reference that we want people to see.
Yeah.
But at some point, kind of like the way the 60s were going until it got derailed deliberately, we were starting to look more collectively. Okay, let's put X amount of money in a pot. I mean, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing. There are ways to do that. I'm not talking about funding Black Panther.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Even Disney had to take a deep breath and say, how much? And I mean, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, Pixar, that kind of, but the stories that we can tell that really would give us a lens on what's going on in our communities now that anybody around the planet can relate to, really don't need to have the kind of visual effects. They really don't need to cast of thousands. And they are projects that properly produced, properly sourced, and just, structured in such a way that you're not paying for dressing rooms. You're actually paying to put a performance on the screen.
Good. Okay? That's good.
So that's where I'm at. So the opportunities are there, and at least the younger generations are getting an opportunity to tell their stories on this scale and on this scale. And the audience, I think, is a lot more sophisticated in terms of how important it is to support, especially that opening weekend or that first week that it's streaming, wherever it is. But it's something that has to even be ramped up from that. Yeah, I know you got to buy milk. You got to put books in the kid's backpack. You know what I'm saying? You've got medical things, but this is our legacy that's being told. And when we get down the road, when all of us are back in the rearview mirror, if our stories still aren't being told, it's just like you can press a button now that we're in a digital space, and it all evaporates.
Yeah.
So you cannot take the pressure off.
It's important to tell our story. I remember when I first got to LA, was doing commercials and that kind of thing.
Right.
I could never book the black guy because I didn't sound like the black guy.
Right.
And those of us who are in, like you say, we're not a monolith. We have different backgrounds, experiences, education levels. We understand that black people don't sound a certain way.
Right.
But the actor who wants to book the gig learns quickly that the casting director thinks that doesn't look like us, thinks we sound a certain way. So to book it, you have to go there. So it's important to be able to have people behind the Quincy Jones, behind the scenes, the Russell Williams, all of these people who are sensitive to the nuances of our culture, so that we're well represented. We're not all pimps and the rest of it. And
I basically lived through some of that era, just being a consumer of films, and then when I got to the industry, I had to make decisions like that with something as basic as, okay, so maybe I got to the point where there are 4 or 5 projects in front of me. That's where you want to be, where you have a choice.
Sure.
Of okay, so do I take A, B, C, D, or E? And then I still had to think in terms of, okay, well, this sounds really great, and I'd love to work with this person, but I also had to make sure it didn't look like I only recorded black voices.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That if someone speaks, someone grunts, and I have my microphone in the right place, they're going to sound as good as they've ever sounded in a film or a television show. I had to make sure I had projects on there that didn't seem like they had anything to do with me as a black person.
Yeah.
But it did have a lot to do with me as being a professional who happened to be a black person.
I love it.
And my agents and I used to talk about that. Well, you could take this or that. And I said, okay, what are the last 2 things I did? And I had to look at it that black and white.
Yeah.
To make sure you had a diversified list of projects on there. So that no one would just think, oh, well, because I still know unit managers and people like that who are great and count money better than just about anybody else, but either they have not gotten the jobs that they really wanted, or the studio that say, but they just work with Spike, or they just work with this person, they just work with Tyler Perry, So it's the double standard still exists. Let no one tell you that that's in the rearview mirror. No one tell you that there's a level playing field. They're talking about now, well, is affirmative action even still relevant anymore? And I'm like, well, is there still white privilege?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, and take that another step further, because I think Alan was just indicating about, where we stand and where we are in the room and which room we're in. Speak a little bit about how that applies to like the Oscars, because the Oscars is voted on by your peers, right? And then those peers need to be our shade and not just others, because that matters into how we get nominated, right?
Well, I would say that the Academy, which I want to say now is 17 branches, and so the Academy is so-called the highest tier of the entertainment awards that are given, because the film industry was the oldest of the modern technical awards, right? So we're talking about an industry that started during Jim Crow, and then when Jim Crow de jure went by the wayside, Jim Crow de facto was still here. So that meant most of the craft jobs, the decision-making jobs, and just about everything else were controlled by a few people with a certain common complexion. So now you get into the Academy, and the rule-making portion of the Academy says that each branch has their own rules to get in. So say if you're an actor and you get nominated on your very first performance, that might be enough to get you invited. Whereas in my branch in sound, I think the rule when I got nominated was I still needed 10 years of credits.
Whoa.
Even with the Oscar in my hand.
Wow.
To have a seat in the audience.
Have a seat. Okay. So long story short, each person that's an Academy member has at least two things that they nominate for. We can only nominate in our branch. So I cannot nominate actors. I cannot nominate directors, writers, etc. And I can nominate for sound, and we all can nominate for best picture. Okay. And then after the nominations are announced, and of course these rules have changed over the years for certain categories like documentary, international, but now we pretty much can vote for whoever gets nominated regardless of what branch we're in. So that's where we are.
Seems fair, more fair.
The other thing is I would say that had it not been for people in the previous decades that voted for the performances, even though the people they voted for, like a Sidney Poitier or Lou Gossett, may not have looked like them, people don't always vote down racial lines. So the hope is, though, that they've added more women, more international, more domestic, so-called minority, but more domestic diverse members to the Academy, that we should start seeing a different list of nominees each year in different categories. But I would say it's the most difficult thing about getting a nomination is the fact that the numbers really favor the people who get the most shots at it.
Yeah.
So
attrition.
So if you have 300 movies that are eligible for some craft in each year, and you have, say, just a minimum of 10 actors in each one of those, then that's 3,000 roles that have to be whittled down to 20 nominations. Best, and supporting.
Sure.
Okay. And the other assumption is that just because a person of color is in a movie that was actually good, it may not necessarily be Academy Award winning.
Right.
So that's that judgment call that the Academy is writ large. The Grammys have to deal with that. The Emmys have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that as people really take a step back, and actually the other problem is the Academy members in all of these different groups don't necessarily view, hear, or watch all of the content that's nominated each year, because that's a job in itself.
It is.
So sometimes it gets down to look, I'm just going to vote for Alvin because I know Alvin. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look, we're talking about hours and hours of stuff that I mean, it's a little bit better once the nominations are announced, because now you have at least you have a finite list. But to get to the nominees, like say, for instance, my wife says, "Oh, what are we watching tonight?" I say, "Well, I'm watching something on the Academy, screeners, and you might have to go to another room because I've got to get ahead." I always come up like,
after a while,
it's a lot of work, and to me, like voting in political elections, it's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. One thing I want to track back to that we brushed on earlier is, in the business, you may be a genius at your craft. You might actually have a really nice personality and people like you, on an interpersonal basis, but politics is as big a part of this industry as anything else.
Yeah, very much so.
Competitive. So I can teach anybody how to do this, but now how do you take the bad notes in a meeting if you're a script writer? Well, I wrote this and I wrote that, and you can't, or you say, you know what? We'll incorporate that. Now, we hadn't really thought of that angle. Now, you know in your head, this was
it's hogwash.
suggestion. But you know what I'm saying? it's like
that's a unique perspective.
We'll see if we can. And then when you come back to the next meeting, we tried 4 or 5 different ways to work this in, but it wasn't true to the character that we were trying to put on the screen. See, so these types of things.
Yeah, that's real world application.
You have to be successful on more than one level.
Yeah.
And I assure you, most people that I know that can do the craft also knew how to work the people part.
Yeah. Politics, psychology.
Oh, yeah.
I remember hearing a story about David Foster with Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, and Clive loved it. He was like, I need to change something in the mix. And Foster took the meeting, and David Foster totally with his own mouth. Took the meeting, said, we'll make a change. Sent him right back the exact same mix, but added that we made the changes that you asked for. I love it. That's the one that you hear on the radio that made all these things that Dave Foster was like,
hey, sometimes you have to do an end run.
Right.
Because, there's a reason some of these people are in those executive positions, because they have come up with some good ideas. And they may be something that you haven't seen. Or that you said, if we flip this around, but other times they're trying to justify the fact that they have this.
They got to have to get some skin in the game.
Otherwise, why are you sitting there? You had nothing to say in the meeting.
Right.
So
exactly.
But I understand in the music business that the other scam was they used to have, these big Neve consoles, and they had what was known as the producer's button. And it wasn't connected to anything. And you would twirl that thing around, and you would swear that the whole EQ and the surround would change, and the engineers would go, okay. So I think that's sitting right there. So that's the one I want. And
that's it. That's it right there.
Not connected to anything but some dust.
But his ego. His ego adjusting. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. So I never know when to say Mr. Russell, Mr. Williams, or Russell, because I have you at both sides of my head. But I want to find out, Russell, what you feel is going to happen in the next few years. Because, as we go along, the film, or I should say the theaters are getting emptier, and the streaming opportunities are getting larger. You look now at the apps. I didn't realize there were so many. You just can't even keep up with how many apps there are to download if you like a certain kind of content or anything. So what do you think is happening, going to happen in the next 5 years or so?
I'm pretty sure, and this is something that pains me to say as a kid that grew up in the theaters, but I don't really see the big box theaters providing anything other than, a place to view the spectacle type films.
Yeah.
And again, the more generations we have coming along that aren't really, like, say, nurtured in that environment, then they won't miss it.
Yeah, right.
My kids are, early 30s, late 20s. So they grew up in the theaters just like I did. But, when they get around to having kids, it may not be the same tradition. It's clearly not sustainable from the exhibition standpoint, meaning the people who own the Regals and the AMCs.
Right.
Because the economics just aren't going to make sense.
Right.
People do not rush to see, say, the touchy-feely, character-driven films on the big screen like we would have, because in my generation, of course, you had to leave home to go to the movies.
Right.
I think that storytelling obviously is not going anywhere, because that's one of the things that has kept the human race moving forward. Now, people might say, well, you're giving that a whole lot of, because stories, stoking the imagination, telling people sitting around a campfire about somebody who overcame this challenge. Even the Bible is essentially stories being told that have, this celestial, background to it. But again, it's all showing how the human condition can rise, fall, can triumph, fail, and when's the next viewing? Because I want to be there for this. I want to root for Lawrence. I want to go to Wakanda. I want to see the guy say, "They call me Mr. Tibbs."
Mr. Tibbs.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I really think that like the IMAXs and some of the bigger theaters. I don't know how these mini and megaplexes are going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure how long the film fest juggernaut that we have now is. It may just whittle down to some of the major ones, and some of the other ones may fall off to the wayside, or they may end up being, online.
Yeah.
But I don't really see much of a future, not in the way that I remember theatrical exhibition, but I do feel that there's so many more platforms and opportunities for people who want to tell stories.
Okay, well, that was leading to my question, because I was going to say, if you were talking to a young Russell Williams or your grandkids, or however, is there hope on the horizon, or were you like,
oh, absolutely,
go a different way? Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, even the old Russell Williams who's sitting here, had I understood more about how the business of show works, I may have made some different decisions while I was there. I mean, I tell people the same pile of mail that AFI said no thank you to my application to get into the directorial program. I got a fairly decent tax return from Uncle Sam. And I said, well, hell, there's more than one way to get to LA. And since I already had a radio background, I had done, news and documentaries with this Nagra thing, this portable recorder. I said, okay, I'll go that way. And then once I get out there, I'll pivot and do something else. But of course, the industry, as you all well know, once you get a reputation that's a good one, but trust me, a bad reputation is the kiss of death. See you by nothing personal. Right. But once you have a good reputation, then they want you in that lane.
Right.
Because what I tell my students is that when you get off that plane with everybody else who has had that unoriginal idea, what unoriginal idea that I'm going to come to LA or New York or Atlanta or something and
change
business. I said, that wasn't an original idea in 1920. No, it certainly wasn't an original idea in 1979. And guess what? In 2022, it's like, you can't even get a plane ticket to get out there. So, but the whole point is that had I understood more about how the business works, then, I would have tried to shift over sooner before I got a reputation in this field, because once you move from an unknown quantity to a known quantity, that's where they want you.
There you go.
Now, see, people with a Screen Actors Guild card, once they've done enough performances on the screen, and sometimes they've bankrolled, and many times I would say they've bankrolled their own directorial debut because they have another card they want to play. Guess what? That works out for them, and now they have a DGA and a SAG card. But in my era, no, we just want you to twirl the dials, put the microphone, and then it's not a knock, but then I got these Oscars. So now I'm hearing from people who would have never looked my name up because, that guy. Okay, well, we need to call him, And so then I had another 10 years.
There you go.
So as I'm trying to weasel my way into producing and things like that, but I'm still, the phone is really ringing for that, Russell.
Right.
But see, that's a good thing on your end, because I understand, at least for females who receive Oscars, it can be the kiss of death.
And for some males, like if you ever get a chance to interview Lou Gossett, he'll say,
yes, exactly.
He basically just cut the cord on his telephone. It wasn't ringing anyway.
Right.
And of course, there are other things, again, personality things. I mean, you can talk yourself out of getting your next project. And what do I mean by that? And this is not racially or gender specific. This is just real deal, real talk. While you're making money, if you're abhorrent, bearish, brutish, I've got to have my M&Ms in this color, and I have to have okay, they'll put up with that as long as your receipts come in right. Once your receipts start to tail off, people realize that these 12 hours are going to be the longest month that they ever spent with somebody.
Right.
As soon as they get a chance to say, oh, no.
Right.
Yeah.
But she'd be perfect for it. He'd you know what?
It's not worth it.
Not as long as I'm running this agency. Not as long as out of this studio. We're talking about folks who cost gobs of money on shoots. We've talking about people who hush money had to be paid to keep a town quiet because something happened off the set.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And and I can't tell you how many times I would be on a set and, it's like folks are having a good time and all this stuff. And I said, well, I might want to join in on this good time. And then I said, Russ, what would your parents and all those people back at the church and whomever at the school who were saying prayers for you every night, how would they feel if you turned up in the, y'all have to Google this, the newspaper, because people say newspaper, what is he talking about? Yeah, Google it. As the latest drug-related incident.
Yeah, right.
So I said, no, you guys go on. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm good. I mean,
before we let you go, I want you to tell me one of your favorite stories that you have in your career, like something that really stood out for you, fun, funny.
Can I add that? Let you know that you made it.
Okay, let's add that.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, have you seen my IMDb page? You know how many movies I got to rewind?
I know. Should I give you a minute? All right.
Okay. I like this full circle thing. All right. Okay. So when I got nominated for Dancing with Wolves, everybody said, Russell, man, you're going to win a second Oscar. I was the person leading a charge saying, there's no way I'm going to get 2 Oscars. Are you kidding? Do you people hit your head somewhere?
Right.
I'm talking about all the way up to the night before the Oscars. I was the disciple for it's not going to happen. Yeah, I'm going to go, but it's not going to happen. All right. So back when I was doing a little radio workshop, I had the honor of interviewing this young lady named Maya Angelou.
Wow.
She was in town doing a book tour for Gather Together in My Name. And in that interview, she talked about how kind of crestfallen she was that some of the young people of my generation, so this we're talking mid-70s, weren't really pushing the bar forward and going after their dreams and taking these calculated risks to get what they wanted done with their own lives. And even after that interview aired and she was off doing her thing, every now and then I would play that back to myself and listen to that section. And I said, okay. So when I'm going to LA in 79, I'm playing that back and say, okay, I'm going to be all right. And so forth and so on. So I never run into Maya Angelou anymore in person until the night before the Oscars, because there used to be a group called the Friends of the Black Oscar nominees, Friends of the Black Emmy nominees. And why were those evenings important? Because we weren't getting invited to the other parties.
Wow.
Until we started getting invited to the other parties. And then people stopped going to the Friends of the Black Oscar and Emmy nominees. But that particular night, the night before dances, I'm looking out there and, chit chat, thanking people for, supporting the work, and hopefully my luck will be better or will be as good tomorrow night as it was last year. And I see Maya Angelou sitting in the room.
Wow.
So my prepared remarks went out the window. And I said, Miss Angelou, you might not remember me, but back in so-and-so, you gave this little college radio jock this interview for Gather Together, and she did one of these numbers. She couldn't believe it.
Wow.
That's the first second that I said, we're going to win another one.
I love it.
I mean, can you believe, how was she there?
Yeah.
That's great.
The same way the year before, when I heard about the nomination for Glory, I was actually working in McDonald's commercial. And of course, McDonald's is where my professional career started.
Right.
Just shaping my, like, good morning, welcome to McDonald's, how may I serve? So I'm like, this is going to happen again? It's no way.
That's awesome.
Signs from above.
Hey, and you know what? Believe those signs.
Yeah.
When that voice says, you might want to skip that party tonight and study for that exam.
Yeah.
Listen to that voice.
Listen. That's your ancestors and some good common sense.
I'm so glad I listened to my voice and went to get my master's, because I would have never met you. And I'm so glad I have, and I'm so glad you share with us today, because it's been amazing as always. You've been the blessing since I met you, on and off, in the class, whatever. I just have really enjoyed always being in your presence and learning from you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Honor for the invite.
Ever since as soon as you hit click and your face appears, you start the inspiration. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a little closer to me now. I think you're still undisclosed. We won't say where you are, but you're a little closer to the West Coast. So I love that.
Hey, look, holla.
Yes.
And what we're going to do, we're going to sit down and we're going to listen to some of our favorite bass players.
Yes.
Marcus Miller's one of them.
Absolutely, he is.
I'm going to throw some Buster Williams on you.
Okay.
Some Ron Carter.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, I'm not on the same coast, but y'all don't have to party without me.
Well, okay. If you insist.
But thank you
guys.
again. All right.
Honored.
Take care.
Absolutely.
Take care.